Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Redevelopment Commission meeting on July 18th, 2022. The first item of business is roll call.
Deb Hutton here.
Randy Cassidy.
Sarah Bowerly Dansman here.
Cindy Canarney here. Staff present?
John.
Martha Street here. Christina Finley with the Hand Department.
Larry Allen Legal.
Yeah, I see Brent Pierce on. He's connecting to audio, so Brent Pierce assisting him right there.
All right, thank you. Next item of business is reading of the minutes for July 5th, 2022, and executive summary for July 5th, 2022. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Randy Cassidy, I'll make a motion to approve.
Deb Hutton, second.
We have a first and a second. All those signify approval via roll call, please.
Deb Hutton, aye.
Randy Cassidy, aye.
Deborah Myerson, yes.
Sarah Bowerly Dansman, yes.
Cindy Canarney, yes. Passes unanimously. Next item of business is examination of claims for July 8th, 2022 for $714,095.35. Do any commissioners have any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Deb Hutton, I make a motion to approve the claims for July 8th, 2022.
Deborah Myerson, I'll second.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor signify by roll call, please.
Deb Hutton, yes.
Deborah Myerson, yes.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
Sarah Bowerly Dansman, yes.
Cindy Canarney, yes. Motion for examination of claims passes. Next item is examination of payroll registers for July 1st, 2022 for $34,420.86. Do any commissioners have any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Randy Cassidy, I'll make approval to motion to approve.
Deb Hutton, second.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor via roll call, please.
Deb Hutton, yes.
Deborah Myerson, yes.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
Sarah Bowerly Dansman, yes.
Cindy Canarney, yes. Passes unanimously. Next item is report of officers and committees. Director's report, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Not too much of a report tonight for commissioners. I just want to welcome officially our new RDC commissioner, Sarah. We did submit our HUD plan to HUD last week. As many of you have been hearing over the summer, that was done. I want to thank the staff for their help with that. And we're starting the process of our annual report, which has to be submitted by the end of August. So one report to another. So lots going on in hand as usual, but happy to answer any questions if you have any.
All right, thank you. Any questions from commissioners? Moving on, is there a legal report?
The only thing I would report, and this probably was covered the last time when I was absent, but we did close on the IU Health parcels besides the main hospital site. So that happened on June 30th. So we've now taken over possession of those parcels, and we should see demolition starting quite soon on the Phase 1 East parcels that are east of Roger Street. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any other questions that the commissioners may have.
Any questions from commissioners? All right, thank you.
I might
Oh,
add
go
that our department handed out some door hangers around the Phase 1 East portion of the Hopewell site just to inform the neighbors and businesses of what was going to be happening soon. So since we're in a meeting, it never hurts to let people know we're trying to raise awareness of that. So thanks, Larry.
All right, thank you. Is there a treasurer's report?
No report, happy to answer questions.
What about a business development update?
I believe we have ESD on tonight. So
No update?
I believe there's going to be an update. If there's any questions, I'm always happy to do my best to answer them or deflect to Alex in the future.
Yeah. All right, thank you. All right, on to new business. Resolution 22-49 to ratify purchase agreement for 320 West A Street. Who would like to speak to us regarding this?
I believe we have our deputy mayor here, Mr. Donald Griffin, to present to you briefly.
That would be me. So this is referred to as the Showers Complex. Right now, currently our mayor, our neighbor, not mayor, I'm sorry. We've entered into a offer to purchase agreement with CFC for the other, there are 3 parts of the Showers complex. One is currently owned by us, the other is owned by CFC, and the other part, the northern section, is owned by the county, Monroe County. We have an offer to purchase on the CFC portion. It has 62,000 square feet of Class A office space. It will almost double the space we currently have. It sits on 0.82 acres, and we are purchasing this primarily for our public safety headquarters, which will include the police headquarters as well as the fire administration headquarters. The asking price was $12 million. We have a mutually agreed to offer to purchase at $9,250,000, and this is roughly $149 a square foot. If we were to build new, we're looking at conservatively, we're looking at $300 a square foot if we were to build new headquarters. And like I said, that's conservatively. So this offer to purchase is contingent upon several things happening. We have a due diligence period of about 60 days. And so we're going to have to start immediately on that. That 60 days starts when the offer gets officially accepted by the RDC. Some of the things that we'll cover is during the discovery period is we're going to have to find out how much it's going to cost to convert the space for our needs, for public safety needs, and that's going to include bringing in architects and public safety construction experts to see how much it's going to cost to put together, to carve out that space for our police facility and fire facility. Right now, our police facility is about 21,000 square feet, the one located on 3rd Street. And then the 4th Street Fire Station 1 currently is our fire station, but it also holds the administration portion of our fire department. And that's a very small space right now, which it's probably less than 1,500 square feet. What else let me see here. So experts, architects, we have to analyze the current leases as well as still do our inspection period. Still do the inspections for physical and mechanicals and that kind of thing. And that's it. That's all. Those are the contingencies that we have on our offer to purchase. And welcome. I mean, you guys can ask me any questions if you'd like.
All right, any questions from commissioners?
Don, you go, Deborah, if you want.
I just was curious because Mr. Griffin was discussing the current space of 65,000 square feet and that the current use of space being, let's say, combined about 23,000 square feet. And just wondering if the acquired space in the offer to purchase is anticipated to be used fully for fire and police, if there are additional uses that are, prospectively under consideration, just trying to understand how the use that is roughly triple the current space might be used.
No, we don't expect to use all of that space. We do know that the current police station is undersized. They are busting at the seams, but we're going to wait for the experts to determine what we need for future growth for the police department. There's many things that we have to consider. We're not just looking for space for Bloomington right now, but we have to think about a growing Bloomington, whether that includes annexation, or are we going to grow within our own, what we have right now? But we're definitely going to need more space for police. But no, we don't expect to use all that 62,000 square feet for the police and fire.
Regarding police and fire administrations, if I think of pure administrations and in general, it's office work. People doing phones and emails and making paper go back and forth and make things happen. However, our police station seems to have a very tactile function from it, in addition to the administration, with the SWAT vehicle, police vehicles all point ready to go and go zoom out. So what if the architect or have the police chief and the fire chief looked at the space and said, yes, we can do all we need to do from a headquarters from there? I mean, or at what point do they get to interact with, say, the architect, a special architect, and say, you got to change it a little bit to make this work? Or
So we didn't go over there just ourselves and say, okay, and then go to the police station, the police chief and the fire chief, and say, okay, this is where you're going to go. There is some. We're not going to get too excited because we want to make sure that it does work. I mean, when I look at a real estate property, I want to do the due diligence. Listen, I think I'm trying to say, if we find out that it doesn't work, I'm good with that. I want to know that it doesn't work. But this is our first step in doing that. It's so much square footage, and it's right next to a complex that we already have. So we've already invested. We're kind of double downing on what we have. When you think about our current building, plus our parking garage that we have, plus the trades district. I mean, it's kind of it makes sense if it makes sense. But we need to make sure it makes sense. So that's why we've got to bring in the experts to say, hey, this either makes sense or it doesn't make sense. But that price, that $149 a square foot, with a Class A historical building, it would be silly for us to ignore it. So we have to make sure that it.
so
Got to
this
make
is-
sure
this,
if it works.
This resolution is just then opening the door to do that due diligence and find those things.
Very much so. It's kind of like, have all of y'all bought a house before? Where you put the offer in, you've agreed upon a price, and you put the offer in, but then your realtor says, not so fast. It's contingent upon financing. We've got to do inspections, and we've got to do this, and we've got to do that, and it's contingent. So that it's the same thing. We've put in enough parameters in here to make sure that it's going to work for us.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions from commissioners?
From a financing standpoint, as we move forward on this, we're looking at utilizing the TIF in the front end.
The TIF in the front end, however, we're going to basically pay y'all back with bonds. We're going to get it bonded, and it's not going to affect your bonding capacity.
Okay.
The RDC's bonding capacity. That's a really good question. Thank you.
Okay, and then when we look at our due diligence that we're moving forward, based upon my understanding of, we're going to have to bring in experts that are in the police aspect of it. Given that time frame, are we able to get the experts on board, due diligence, and still meet our contingent time frames?
We're working on that, but yes, it's the timeline. It's 60 days plus 12 days, but I'm just using the facts. I'm using the 60, but we should be able to, because we've been working on getting folks even before we come to you. So we should be okay on that. Our closings, it's set to close no later than January 31st of next year.
From a standpoint, dealing with it from a financing standpoint and such, and I have to ask this because, as John put it previously, there's a lot going on here. do we have the adequate staff, or do you need any additional items in order to do your due diligence in the time frame from the RDC? Any additional consultants and such that we need to make sure we hit all these time frames, because there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I think we're fine. Is our controller on here at all?
No, he left.
Okay. Take me with you. No, just teasing.
No, Randy, Commissioner, no, we'll do, all of this will be outside staff. We'll just be managing. It'll be a team of Don, myself, John, Alex, and Larry Allen are the internal team, but we'll be bringing experts to environmental, HVAC, electrical, building envelope, and we'll be doing deep dive into the due diligence, as well as Larry will be reviewing all of the leasing documents that come across, as well as looking at IT-related issues. So it'll be very thorough, and the people that we bring in that specialize in those areas.
Okay, particularly with the fire and police. Okay.
Yes, on the architectural side, for the police and fire, on the normal due diligence on the building itself and all of the features, but they'll bring that additional expertise to say, is the electrical sufficient? What area would we put them in? How would we make them secure? So it'll be very specific to police and fire. Less so on the fire side, because it's the administrative offices.
Okay.
They probably can fit in some of the space, but more specifically for the security needs of the police, and locker evidence, and secure rooms for interview rooms, and workout area, and so forth. Secure lobby, so that's what they'll be looking at.
Okay, thank you.
And you mentioned, I did not answer your question. You mentioned, how the police vehicles were going to access the property and leave the property. So they'll also be looking at that. Is there enough parking? And when you access, and it's, I had this idea of like the calling all cars kind of thing, but it's not like that anymore. I think they have their roll calls, and then they're out. They're in their cars or their offices. So it may not be as big of an issue as we might envision, but I think that's why we need the experts to tell us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Can you speak to the capacity constraints that exist in the current city office space that this could alleviate?
Oh yeah, we have, and I'm sure people have heard this. We have serious. It was worse prior to the pandemic, because now we have so many folks that are a couple of days at home, a couple of days here, or so it's we're not as busting out of the seams as we used to be, but some more space could definitely help, especially more rooms like this. I don't know. I mean, you've been here and where someone's waiting for you, that kind of thing. So there is that ability to add additional space, much needed space.
So other projects I've been familiar with, it's, this type of acquisition can definitely provide a lot of operational efficiencies. Can you speak to operational efficiencies that this project could potentially bring to the city?
Such as? Help me out.
Such as having, more collaboration, less operational costs or expense, because things are spread out and now they'll be kind of consolidated into one location.
I think you did a really great job of just explaining that. But no, you're right. That there is a better chance of collaboration between departments, between commissions. But yes, that's a very good point. That will be very much beneficial. Because right now we've been looking at ways of using our hallways for because the way you use an office is now different. We're having more Zoom meetings and more, and so folks need. So we're looking at pods, because you may be in Zoom meeting, and I'm in a separate Zoom meeting, and right now we have cubicles, and that's not working out. So this is going to give us that ability to think about the office of the future.
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners?
So, given that there's quite a bit more space in the part of the building that you're planning to purchase, and you mentioned that you need more space than what is currently available in the Police on 3rd and the 4th Street Fire Station, but it does seem like there will be some extra space. So is there any plan for what that space might be used for?
Not yet, because our primary in our lit, we just got more, we got more lit from the community, our local income tax, and part of the ask was the bonding capacity for a new fire station, new police station. And so we really have to focus on, we basically have to do what we said we were going to do. We told the public what we were going to do and why we were going to use these funds. So the primary thing is that brand new police department, because both of those places flooded. We still have to find a new fire station, either a new fire station or redo the one that we have, because what happened during the flood, that can't happen again if we're really talking about the seriousness of taking our public safety seriously. But our primary goal is to provide new spaces for those folks. And then then we can dream about other stuff that we can do.
So my other question is about, you mentioned that one of the contingencies is an analysis of current leases. And I'm curious if you have any information about how many leases are currently in the building and kind of how you're going to deal with that, because it can be really challenging as a small business owner to find good leases for offices around here.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They have tenants' rights. So if someone has a 5-year lease, they have a 5-year lease, and we have to abide by that or help them find another space. So that's one of the things that we have to look at. And so we haven't received the leases yet, but we're going to get the leases within 10 days after accepted offer to purchase.
So if this is approved and signed, then within 10 days they should turn over the leases to us. At that point, we've done this in the past also, where we've kind of worked with the tenants and tried to negotiate, maybe slightly different terms to make it a little more flexible. We've used open-ended leases so that while people are looking for space, they do have a place to utilize. They have maybe a shorter window of notice that they could give us for vacating the space. So those are the kind of things, as soon as we get those, that we'll be looking at within that period, but they should arrive within 10 days of approval.
Well, as someone who has toured that looking for office space in the past, there's a dearth of good places downtown, so that's something to really consider.
Any other questions from commissioners?
I had one last question.
Okay.
I understand that the original asking price was $12 million and that the offer is $9,250,000. Mr. Gunn, could you talk more about the two independent appraisals for the fair market value of the property?
The two, I don't remember the exact, I think they were between, was the low end 6.5? Larry, is that right?
I'd have to pull it up. I can do that.
And then the high end was somewhere in the mid 7s, if I'm not mistaken. Those appraisals were based on the income approach. And so whatever it's, this, in the middle of the pandemic, You're looking at the income of office space, where some of those spaces are empty. You're going to get a lower number, and we're not really looking at the building as, we're not looking at it as income producing property. It is what it is. It's income producing property, and that's how you have to look at it when you are doing your appraisal. However, from the standpoint that we're looking at it, we need it as a either replacement or we have to look at it as how much would it cost for us to build a property like that. And even if you look at, I think I put a number in at $250 a square foot, which right now you can't even build a house at $250 a square foot. But I put it in at $250 a square foot, and you're looking at a value of $15,500,000 for 62,000 square feet. So so our first, when we write offers for the RDC, we take those appraised values and we have to write an offer that's somewhere in between those appraised values. And we did that. We tried that a couple of times. And then after that, you have to, if the seller is not moving on that, you have to adjust, you have to go ahead and adjust it if it's something that you value. And so we did that. I think our 9.25 contingent upon it. We never know what we're going to find due to inspections, right? We never know. But CFC is a really good landlord. So we're probably not going to get any big surprises. But we feel the 9.25 million is a decent number.
So the two appraisals, the first one, the lowest one was 5.5 million, but the highest one was almost 7.7, so 7,690,000.
Thank you.
Just since the city in using appraisals would not typically, that I can think of, use the income base, even though of course I understand that's the appraiser's use. Is there any kind of formula the city has applied in other circumstances to try and calibrate between an income-based appraisal and the actual use? I understand Mr. Giving, you described the replacement value. Is that the basic alternative? Is there any other calibration that is typical for this kind of situation?
Jeff, what have they used before? Our controller would know.
It's really been based on the building as far as the appraisals are concerned, and then the type of use. And then we use factors of kind of the highest and best use in trying to assign a value to it. In this particular case, it was replacement value of what would it take us to go build a similar facility. That required the land and the cost of the building, and what Don has talked about is just the actual physical replacement of the building itself, not inclusive of any land costs.
Deborah, does that answer your question?
That's helpful. I appreciate it. Thank you for your help.
All right, any other comments or questions from commissioners?
One last question in
Okay.
regards to, is there any other board approvals that are necessary to move forward in the due diligence process, or?
No.
I will say, sorry.
No, you're
Deputy
fine.
Mayor, I was gonna, so the next step for the process, not for the due diligence process, but before the sale can be completed, because it's a sale over $5 million, it does require common council approval. So just for the purchase of the agreement, that does not include financing. So any kind of financing deal, if it comes through the RDC, through our bonding process, that would have to come back to you for separate consideration and then also get approved again by the common council. So there's a potential 3 other meetings at least, any bonding outside of RDC bonding. So whether we're talking about using public service, local income tax, or something else that's outside of that RDC process would again have to be approved by Common Council. So there are a few steps there to getting financing approval and also approval before the purchase can be completed.
But we can start the due diligence today.
That's correct. Yeah, we're going to start the due diligence. We'll start the process, but we're also going to start that clock on getting Common Council approval as well.
Okay, to move forward in regard to, so we're the first step from a financing standpoint, and the final step would end up going through the council, administration, council, approval, bond issue, repayment of anything that the RDC has expended.
Potentially, yeah, depending on what the financing options
Sure.
are, which we'll keep you appraised of as we explore those options. That's why we have that till that January 31st timeline, which is kind of specifically to explore those financing options. It takes us a little while. Obviously, Jeff uses his consultants well and is kind of a master at telling us what we can afford and how we can afford it, and also completing these surveys, which are specialized. So the space elements for police take not just any architect, it takes a really specialized architect. It takes some time to figure out that use.
Okay, thank you.
And this is contingent upon financing.
It is.
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? Any comments from the public?
Yeah, I have a question. Dave Askin with the Beast Bulletin. Just by way of background, I'm trying to popularize the idea of using public comment time to ask questions as opposed to express an opinion or give a comment. And I do understand that there's no legal requirement for anybody to give an answer, but I figure the least I can do is ask the questions. So I wanted to circle back to the question that Commissioner Meyerson asked about the two appraisals. From covering county government, I always got the idea that it was a pretty hard and fast, rigid requirement that the government couldn't buy land for more than the average of the two appraisals. So in this case, it sounds like maybe the county's just being, or has been, more conservative. But what is the actual law here? I mean, what allows us to exceed the cost of the highest appraisal by a considerable amount? So that's one question. And the other question, Commissioner Canarney asked about the benefits of consolidation and the efficiency that comes with that. But for the fire department, from one perspective, we're not consolidating, we're actually separating administration from fire operations. So, I mean, I don't know anything about fire departments and firefighter morale because I've never been a firefighter, but I could imagine that maybe the separation between administration and firefighting, that would promote a division or a rift between administration and firefighters that would be undesirable, where right now they're housed in the same building, a sense of camaraderie, et cetera. So I'm wondering if the fire department has been consulted about that particular issue. Those are the two questions. Thanks.
Any other public comment? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Deb Hutton, I move to approve Resolution 2249 as written.
Okay, I will,
What did you say?
second is Sarah Bowerly Dansman, second.
We have a first and a second. Commissioners, please vote via roll call, please.
Deb Hutton, yes.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
All right, that was Deborah Meyerson, yes.
Sarah Bowerly Dansman, yes.
Cindy Canarney, yes. Resolution 22-49 passes. Next item of business is Resolution 22-50, approval of right-of-way services agreement for First Street Reconstruction Project. Who would like to speak to us regarding this?
Patrick Durkis from engineering. Excuse me.
Hi, Patrick Durkis with engineering. For NDOT LPA contracts, we are not allowed to contract for the right-of-way services until after the environmental is approved. So this contract, while it's still with the design team that we originally had, is just following the NDOT process. Typically, this would be an addendum in other projects, but following the NDOT process, this has to be a separate contract. Last RDC meeting, I brought a contract deduct of around 59,000, and this contract brings that takes away a little bit of that deduct, which I believe is I don't have the contract in front of me right now. I believe it was around $31,000.
$31,380.
$31,380. Available for any questions?
Any questions from commissioners?
We're gonna need the appraisals for the right-of-way, correct?
So the appraisals were already included. We're allowed to put that in. We can't put the right-of-way management in. So this contract, the $31,880 is only for the right-of-way management services. So that's for the design team for managing the appraisal process, and then also for recording of documents and such.
And overall, that amount is in our overall budget as of now.
Correct. We are not exceeding the current allotted budget. We're still under it by a little bit more than $20,000.
Okay.
27 and change.
Okay. Andrew's good.
Yes.
Any other questions from commissioners? Any comment from the public? Christine, anybody?
Nope,
Okay.
no chat.
All right, I will entertain a motion for resolution 22-50.
Sarah Bowerly Danson motions to proceed, to
Approve.
Resolution 22.
Of 22.
Randy Cassidy, I'll make a second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Vote via roll call, please.
Deb Hutton, yes?
Myerson, yes.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
Sarah Bowerly Danson, yes.
Cindy Canardi, yes. Resolution 22-50 is approved. Next item of business is any general or business discussion. Not hearing any? Go ahead.
One question.
Yes.
Have we moved anywhere on our Cottage Grove, getting rid of that, and on our, I got two, so.
Two.
Cottage Grove, well, two questions.
Oh, okay.
One at a time.
The first question in Cottage Grove, Mr. Flory, yeah, we have all the documents. We think that should be able to be closed. We've had those ready for some time. We need Mr. Flory's signature. I think we're reaching out to him to get that on the purchase agreement. I actually have, for President Canarney, the deed, the limited warranty deed, and the sales disclosure form tonight, so that we could just speed up that closing process as best as possible. That was being handled at a staff level with hand, so they're ready to finish that up. And there was some delay, but we've tried to communicate. I think the Office of the Mayor has been communicating with Mr. Flory as well. I'm sure he's reached out to everybody involved, but also hand staff will take care of that.
But that still, and based on that, that still leaves the RDC in ownership of some of the lots at the present moment.
Yeah, the closing with the agreement and what was approved by the RDC, I think that was resolution, I think it's 2222. I may be off on the numbers there. I apologize if I am. Was only for the immediate parcel behind Mr. Flory's land. There was significant concern about allowing the closing or allowing the sale to one resident of that street of all of the right-of-way, which was bid on. So we only permitted at the recommendation, or the RDC permitted at the recommendation of staff, only that one parcel. It's 25 feet of right-of-way, essentially right behind his property.
Something we don't need. Okay, that answers question one. Question two, on our RFPs that went out on the 42 lots there, are we moving ahead in regards to review of those? Do you see bring that back to RDC in the next 3, 6, 9 months?
Well, see what is required by the RDC. We've got some interviews coming up. Mr. Pierce is kind of heading that one up for us. First week of August, we should be talking to the developers after some review by staff. So that's kind of the tentative schedule. We've reached out to all of those who responded and have told them that first week we're going to try to get stuff set up for them. And then after that, we'll need to see kind of what process would be involved, because the land transfer, whether that would come to the RDC or whether we would desire to put that into a land trust, kind of have to make those decisions as we move through the process of deciding.
In that aspect, at this present moment, it's not owned by the RDC.
No,
Is that
it's
a
not.
correct statement?
No, it's
Okay.
it's still owned by the the developer, which is Trinitas Ventures, and they are going through the process for getting all their, well, they're still finishing their construction, as you may know. We've started the inspection process of the units that are to be leased. So the development is in two sort of sections. There's the rental, the 800 or so units, bedrooms, about 300 units. And those are going through kind of a rolling inspection construction process as that finishes up to be leased this fall. And then once all that is in a condition where planning will sign off and everything is good to go there, then the lots are scheduled to be transferred to the city.
So it'll be transferred depending upon how you want to proceed, land trust.
That's our plan. So in the process of talking to the developers who have responded, we're going to sort of take all that in and figure out what the best model would be, what we think would be the best, whether we do all of that to a land trust, whether we kept some and sold some lots individually. That'll be what we talk about over the next month or so.
Okay. And then last question.
Sure.
The ones that we got off of Habitat, that's done.
Not done yet. I think we have that with the title company right now. So we've completed the due diligence process, and we're going through the title process there.
So after that's done, then we have to cut the grass.
That's correct.
Okay, just verifying from a time frame.
That's right. Yep.
From a grass standpoint.
Yep.
Okay.
We'll get those added to our contract that we have. So good
Thank
question.
you.
Thank you.
All right, any other business to discuss? If not, I'll entertain. Go ahead, Deborah.
I had a question. I just was intrigued by Mr. Askins's question about, I was wondering if Mr. Allen could clarify the law about the fair market appraisals and when an offer to purchase does go beyond those two appraisals. I just was wondering to understand that clarification on that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So the answer essentially is that there are two different statutes that they operate under. So the RDC has its own unique statutes in regard to property acquisition. So in this case, Indiana 36-7-14 19 is the property acquisition statute. It does provide that offers have to be the average of the two appraisals unless specifically authorized by the RDC. So whenever the RDC authorizes a price greater than the average of those two appraisals, it's okay. However, for general governments, whether it be the city, I think this applies to the city as well, second class city. I'm not as familiar with the county statute, to be honest with you, but I'd imagine it operates very similarly to the second class city statutes. You are limited to only being able to pay the average of those two appraisals. There's no exception for explicit authorization above that amount. So that's a way that it functions differently when you have a redevelopment commission versus the government itself purchasing land. So it's just a slightly different process.
Thank you.
You brought up one other question. I hate to even ask this, but does BMFC still exist, or has that been closed out?
It does still exist. So they still own. So the BMFC is the Bloomington Municipal Facilities Corporation. It was a nonprofit that was founded to kind of hold and do I think it was like a lease purchase agreement. Actually, in fact, they were the owner, technically still the owner of City Hall, because they were used as the financing operation to purchase City Hall and for the renovations. And so they still own a variety of right-of-way. One of the things we are looking at, because we have paid off all that bonding as of either early this year or late last year, we paid off all the bonding on all the properties that the BMFC owned. We think it probably makes sense to transfer that now to the ownership of the city generally. Places like City Hall, it doesn't really make sense to have the small board, but that does require us to hold a meeting of the board and we had broached the subject last year with them. We've kind of been easing them into that. One of the things that we'll need to do is it's a fairly long list of very small parcels that we need to present to them. City Hall is actually the easiest one, but oddly enough, they own, this is more information than you probably wanted, they own a lot of right-of-way on West 3rd Street that are individual parcels, kind of similar to what you have on Cottage Grove. And so one of the things we need to do is just have a comprehensive list of all those and then perform quick claim deeds on all that to transfer it back to the city since we've paid off the debts on that. But they do still exist.
I didn't know because at one point, and this may just be, historical hearsay, but did they own the fire station on 4th Street at one point?
Yep. They own the fire station. They were responsible for the financing also of the fire station on 4th Street. But as I said, all the bonds paid off. And so one of the functions of the BMFC for a long time, their function was to meet annually, recertify themselves, certify with the state as a nonprofit, but then also fill out all the necessary bonding paperwork to the banks to let them know we're still solvent, we're still paying our bills, we're still on our way to paying off those bonds. And so now that we paid off the bonds, almost all the business that the BMFC has is pretty well wrapped up, but we still need to do the final conveyance.
Okay, thank
So
you.
did they exist before RDC and are now not needed after you've given away or transferred all of the ownerships?
I don't know, actually. I don't know if they existed before RDC, and that's because the RDC kind of went through different configurations over time.
Right.
I think likely the RDC existed before the BMFC.
Oh, really? Okay.
There have just been, over time, there are different mechanisms for which municipalities can acquire land and finance land. One of the popular ways in the 90s and early 2000s was kind of lease purchase agreements, where you would have a private entity. This is also true of the parking garages that are actually near the downtown, is that you would have kind of a private entity set up to lease that, or to finance that, and the city would essentially lease back and then pay the debt servicing on those facilities until the debt was paid off, and then the city could acquire ownership
Rent-owned,
finally.
okay.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah, it's a full of pep version of city government and facilities. So that's one of the functions of the BMFC. Sorry, of
Yeah.
course Jeff Underwood's gonna correct everything I said.
I'm the old guy in the room, so, the redevelopment commission in a different form existed prior to the BMFC. They primarily were focused on the federal dollar grant programs. Once tax increment financing became available, the redevelopment, that fell to the redevelopment commission. I think they were renamed, they were given additional duties. It's one of the weird things where the controller is actually the treasurer for the redevelopment commission. So once the TIF legislation came in, the building corps kind of went to the wayside. There were other ways to finance municipal buildings, basically outside of property tax based or levy based general obligation bonds, of which there's a statutory limit of 2%. So they were both created as ways to allow government to build buildings, net needed buildings, but not necessarily run up against that constitutional debt limit.
Thank you very much.
All right, anything else for general discussion? That was good. If not, I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn.
Randy Cassie, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Deb Hutton, second.
All in favor? Aye. Good night, everyone.
Aye.